Have you ever paused, looked up at the vast expanse of the night sky and wondered, what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? Imagine a cosmic collision of epic proportions. It's a question that's puzzled thinkers for centuries, sparking debates and philosophical explorations across generations. An unstoppable force, by definition, possesses limitless power and energy, meaning it can't be stopped by anything. An immovable object, by definition, is unyielding and resistant to any force, meaning it can't be moved no matter what. So, what happens when they collide? What would the resulting chaos look like? This is the Irresistible Force Paradox, a thought experiment that challenges our understanding of logic and possibility. A classic brain twister that exposes the limitations of language and the assumptions we make about the world. The real puzzle isn't about finding an answer, a definitive solution to this impossible scenario, but about why the question itself is so tricky and what it reveals about how we think. If a truly unstoppable force exists, then an immovable object can't, because the very definition of unstoppable implies the ability to overcome any resistance, and vice versa. The existence of a truly immovable object negates the possibility of an unstoppable force. The paradox exposes a flaw in our logic, a contradiction inherent in the way we've defined these concepts. Both can't exist at the same time, because their existence is mutually exclusive and contradictory. It's like asking, what does blue smell like? A question that attempts to bridge two unrelated sensory experiences. The question breaks the rules of logic, highlighting the absurdity of applying one concept to a domain where it doesn't belong. The beauty of this paradox is in exploring the limits of our understanding, pushing the boundaries of what we can conceive and articulate. It's a mental exercise that reveals the hidden assumptions how language and logic shape our view of reality, influencing the way we perceive and interpret the world around us. By examining this riddle, we learn about the power of abstract thought and the limits of our conceptual frameworks, of the concepts we invent and how those concepts can both illuminate and obscure our understanding. So let's dive into the history and science, the philosophical underpinnings behind this ultimate cosmic riddle, and unravel the layers of complexity it presents. Get ready to challenge everything you think you know and prepare for a journey into the heart of logical paradox. Our journey starts in ancient China, a land of rich history and profound philosophical traditions. We delve into the wisdom of the ages with a story from the Han Feizi, a collection of essays attributed to the legalist philosopher Han Fei. Picture a merchant in a bustling market, a vibrant hub of commerce and social interaction, selling two incredible items, objects of great power and seemingly unmatched capabilities. He boasts of a spear, forged with the finest metals and imbued with ancient magic, a spear that can pierce anything, and alongside it, a shield crafted by the most skilled artisans, a shield that nothing can pierce. The crowd is amazed, captivated by the merchant's bold claims and the allure of invincibility. But amidst the awe, someone driven by curiosity and a thirst for truth asks the pivotal question, what happens if you strike your shield with your spear? The merchant is speechless, caught in the web of his own exaggerated promises. If the spear wins, shattering the shield upon impact, then the shield isn't truly impenetrable, is it? If the shield wins, deflecting the spear's mighty thrust, then the spear isn't truly unstoppable. He's trapped by his own claims, unable to reconcile the inherent contradiction, a perfect contradiction, a logical impossibility laid bare. This simple yet profound story gave the Chinese language the word for contradiction, a concept deeply embedded in their culture. Maodun, literally spear shield, a term that encapsulates the essence of conflicting statements. Whenever someone makes two claims that can't both be true simultaneously, presenting an irreconcilable conflict, they're essentially selling you a spear and a shield, promising the impossible. The lesson? The problem isn't with the spear or the shield themselves. The objects are not at fault, but with the flawed logic behind their descriptions, the inherent impossibility of their combined claims. The paradox is born from the impossibility, the logical dead end created by these conflicting absolutes. Of both absolutes existing together, a fundamental violation of logical consistency. It's a timeless reminder, a lesson passed down through generations. Beware of claims that sound too absolute, promises that seem too good to be true. The spear and shield story is the irresistible force paradox in action, a classic example of logical fallacy. It's not about the objects. The physical spear and shield are merely symbols. It's about the limits of logic, the boundaries of what can be reasonably asserted, and that's what makes it so fascinating, a glimpse into the power and the pitfalls of human reasoning. The Greeks, with their rich tapestry of myths and legends, had their own version of this paradox, a story that explores the very nature of fate and impossibility. It's a tale hidden in myth, a narrative passed down through generations, grappling with concepts that continue to challenge our understanding of the world. Meet the Tumessian fox, a creature destined by fate to never be caught, an embodiment of elusiveness and perpetual escape. And then there's Laelaps, a hound of legend, destined to catch absolutely anything it chased, an unstoppable force of pursuit. When this hound chases this fox, you get an impossible hunt, a scenario where two absolute destinies clash head-on. It's an uncatchable fox, pitted against an unstoppable dog, a paradox that threatens to unravel the very fabric of reality. If the hound catches the fox's inherent fate, its very reason for being, is irrevocably broken. Conversely, if the fox manages to escape, the hound's destiny, its purpose, its unwavering ability to catch anything is shattered. The universe, bound by its own laws and principles, simply can't resolve this inherent contradiction. It's an equation with no logical solution. Zeus, the king of the gods, witnessing the impending chaos and the unraveling of order, intervenes with divine authority. He turns both animals to stone, immortalizing them in a frozen chase, and then places them among the stars as constellations, forever locked in their impossible pursuit. The paradox, therefore, is resolved not through logical deduction or a satisfying conclusion, but by effectively removing both the hunter and the hunted from the realm of reality. The myth poignantly shows that some contradictions, no matter how hard we try, simply can't be solved within the confines of our understanding. They can only be artfully avoided. The Greeks, in their wisdom, understood that when two absolutes, two unyielding forces collide with unstoppable momentum, reality itself is forced to bend and distort. The story serves as a cosmic reminder of the inherent limits of both fate, that which is predetermined, and logic, the tool we use to comprehend the world around us. Sometimes the only viable answer, the only path to resolution, is to gracefully step outside the confines of the paradox, to transcend the limitations of the problem itself. And that's a profound and enduring lesson, a piece of ancient wisdom that remains as relevant and insightful today as it was when the myth itself was first conceived. It's a lesson as old as myth itself. Why do philosophers love paradoxes like this? Because they're stress tests for logic. Paradoxes reveal cracks in our definitions and force us to question our assumptions. The irresistible force paradox pushes our ideas to their breaking point. It asks, are our concepts precise, or are we fooling ourselves with words? Contradictions like unstoppable force meets immovable object show that not all statements can be true at once. Logic has rules. Like the law of non-contradiction, something can't be both A and not A. These puzzles aren't just games. They shape how we build arguments and scientific theories. If a theory contains a contradiction, it's flawed. The paradox teaches us to be skeptical of absolutes and to examine every premise. It's a mental workout for clear critical thinking. So, how do we solve the paradox? Most philosophers say the setup is flawed. You can't have both an unstoppable force and an immovable object. They cancel each other out. The scenario is a logical impossibility, not a real dilemma. In physics, unstoppable and immovable require infinite energy or mass, things that don't exist in our universe. The paradox is impossible because the objects it describes are impossible. Some thinkers use this to explore ideas about power and perfection. True omnipotence, for example, doesn't mean doing the logically impossible. The inability to create a square circle isn't a weakness, it's a sign of logical consistency. Ultimately, the paradox teaches us to question the premises, not just the answers. We can reject the existence of such objects, redefine the terms, or accept the absurdity. Each approach reveals something about the relationship between language, logic, and reality. The real lesson? Not all questions are worth answering. Sometimes the question itself is the problem. The irresistible force paradox has a famous cousin, the omnipotence paradox. Can an all-powerful being create a stone so heavy it can't lift it? If yes, then the being can't lift the stone, so it's not all-powerful. If no, then it can't create the stone, again, not all-powerful. The paradox exposes a flaw in the idea of unlimited power. Many philosophers argue that omnipotence means doing anything logically possible, not the impossible. Creating a square circle or a stone too heavy to lift isn't a real task. It's nonsense. The problem isn't with power, but with the question itself. The omnipotence paradox helps us refine our definitions, not disprove the concept. Even our grandest ideas must obey the rules of logic. It's a reminder language can trick us into asking impossible questions. When paradoxes get too abstract, philosophers reach for Newton's flaming laser sword. This principle says, if a question can't be settled by experiment, it's not worth debating. Can we test unstoppable forces or immovable objects in a lab? No. They require infinite energy or mass. Impossible in our universe. So the paradox is a fun thought experiment, but not a real scientific problem. Newton's flaming laser sword helps us focus on questions we can actually answer. Science advances by testing ideas, not by chasing untestable paradoxes. It's a tool for cutting through confusion and staying grounded in reality. Sometimes the best answer is to move on. You might think this paradox is just for philosophers, but it shows up in real life all the time. In politics, we see absolute rights clash with absolute necessities like privacy versus security. If both are truly absolute, compromise is impossible. The lesson? Real-world solutions require flexibility, not absolutes. Instead of all or nothing, we find balance: strong rights with reasonable exceptions, robust security with oversight. The same goes for personal dilemmas: save every penny versus enjoy life now. Framed as absolutes, these goals clash. But with flexibility, we find a middle ground. The paradox teaches us to question extremes and seek practical solutions. Life isn't black and white. Logic helps us navigate the grey. When you feel stuck between two extremes, challenge the absolutes. That's how we move forward. So what have we learned from the irresistible force paradox? The real answer is that the question itself is flawed. These absolutes can't coexist. The paradox is a lesson in the limits of language and logic. We can invent concepts that don't match reality and string them into impossible questions. The value isn't in solving the paradox, but in understanding why it can't be solved. It teaches us to examine our assumptions and spot contradictions. The spear and shield story is a timeless warning. Beware of claims that sound too absolute. Paradoxes are mental gyms. They strengthen our reasoning. Some questions are unanswerable, and that's okay. The real power is in knowing the limits of our logic, and that's an idea worth pondering.